Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, he didn't have like he wouldn't charge me. I tried to pay him. He just like nope. And so anyway, it comes to this last round. I'm making my way through my warm up passes, and here's Lucky on the far corner at LaPoint's, just standing with his jean shorts and a beer, no shirt. Every time I pass by, he's like fist pumping, like run 32 off, and I just look at him. He's over there like fist pumping me, like sending me the stoke. I was like, all right, Lucky. Like, it kind of made me chuckle. I dropped and, got down, ran 39. Lucky's over there, like, throwing the fists at me, like, come on. And it's just, it turned out to be one of those passes. Like, this would be another example of the flow state.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Water Ski Podcast. Sorry for the little abrupt interruption of Corey's story. That's the story of his feat of running the 41 off pass. One of the very few people in the history of the sport that managed to do such a feat. But I wanted to give a little funny context into that run. In any case, enjoy the second part of the interview with Corey Vaughn. Basically, we start from where we left off last week, from him getting his open rating and skiing nationals and being on the podium with people that he looked up to and almost idolized, to then his journey into becoming a pro skier. There are some funny stories. There's some cool developments that brought him to be the skier that he is, an amazing skier, someone to always like a force to be reckoned with at any pro event, and especially, in my opinion, shaped him also in the fantastic man that he is. And I'm proud and humbled to call him a dear friend. So enjoy. There are a few, let's call them news or updates or announcements about the podcast that I'll make in the upcoming weeks. Cool stuff, additional things to promote the sport. But until then, enjoy the second part and catch you next week. All right, Corey. So in the first part, we left off with your first Open Nationals, first podium, that sort of like experience with Kris. So Sunday was like the start of something. And that's what I really want to cover in this second part. Like your journey into pro skiing, how you got there. Because as you said, you obviously started maybe a little later than most. And then some highlights. And we just want to hear your pro experience.
Yeah, so I think definitely later than most. I was 23 years old, I guess, at that point when I made a decision, kind of made a commitment with myself. And then it has been a journey since then. I mean, that's the only way I could really describe it. That initial nationals was and is a big highlight. I had my granddad was there with me. A bunch of friends, ski friends and whatnot from Virginia was there watching, and kind of a big moment getting on the podium with these guys that I was starstruck about, that I only read about in magazines or seen on like the videos that had come out. So to kind of be walking around with them, I mean, I was definitely nervous but super honored to be out there with them. And then so like in that moment, I did kind of achieve like a flow state and skied my very best. Somehow it went, I'd say, just exactly the opposite way. After that, I signed up for the California Pro-Am. It was be my first like cash prize tournament in September of that same year. And, I just remember looking at the starting list and seeing all these names ahead of going out there. And it's like, Terry Winter, Will Asher, Thomas DeGasperi. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's everybody that I had been, reading about.
So hold on, 2009 was your first pro tournament, Cali Pro-Am?
Yep.
Dude, that was my first pro tournament.
Really?
That's so cool. Jamie was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamie, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, first pro tournament.
How did it go for you?
Pretty bad. Pretty
Say-
bad. Yeah,
okay.
pretty bad.
I was saying, like, for me, I was nerve-wracked, like, going into it. I was trying to overtrain, I guess, and, like, I was just way too mentally worked up.
Yeah, me too.
Probably
Any funny story from that tournament?
that one, I wouldn't say that comes offhand. I think it might have just been too green to, like, really have a big, like, standout moment. I made good friends with Tom Meekum, who was the announcer.
Yep.
If you remember, he retired a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but
yeah, of course.
that was maybe one of the meaningful things that came out of that tournament. I think it was the following year that I skied one round at the California Pro-Am dressed as Bowie Wonder.
All right.
So that was maybe a little more comical relief. And ironically, I skied my better of the 2 rounds. Didn't make the finals for sure, but my better of 2 rounds with the cape and the buoy on my head versus the round where I,
Wear a life jacket.
went normal, like,
Yeah,
with a life
exactly.
jacket and stuff. So hard to say.
See, I had one for that tournament. I was first pro tournament, obviously sitting on my ski bag, and you remember at that site, you had that walk. It was kind of like a little bridge, and you could see the starting dock, and there was this field of grass where everyone that at the ski was sort of hanging out. And I remember for whatever reason, we weren't really seated the first round properly, I guess, in terms of level. And so I was just there sitting on the bag, like really shitting my pants. And Jamie comes along and he goes, "Oh, you're from Italy. You like playing soccer?" And I said yes, although the truth was no. I've always hated soccer. And so we bounced the ball a little bit, just, like, and he helped me. He saw that I was nervous, essentially. And then someone from the dock called him and said, "Hey, Jamie, you're up in 2, man." And Jamie goes, "Oh, sorry, I gotta go." And I remember him, like, putting his life jacket on, 4.5 at 41 top seed first round.
Wow.
I was like, wow, what a guy, And I think I did like 2 at 38 or something obnoxious, but I was like, wow, look at that,
That's just the way he rolled. I mean, I'm so glad I overlapped on the tour with him a little bit because, he had a reputation. I saw him in the videos. He was amazing to watch. So it was very cool to see him ski in person, obviously. Many times I would be not in the finals and watching him in the finals. But, yeah, it's just kind of how he rolled. I remember one California Pro-Am. He hung out pretty late at the party, was like kind of drinking and carrying on. And he was in the finals the next day. I was at the party because I was not.
Right.
And I was walking around the bank the next day. I saw him kind of like just passed out, literally under a tent, like a half an hour before his ski ride. And I was just like, oh, geez, maybe he shouldn't have been out so late at the party. But goes out there and runs 4 at 41. I remember being at I think it was one of my first Malibu Opens in Milwaukee. And I threw out my yoga mat. I was like very seriously trying to do my stretching and get into the zone. And I'm like somewhere in the middle of an upward dog or a downward dog. And I kind of like smelled something familiar. And it was like the smell of some weed. And I was just like, man, we're in the middle of this park. That's kind of brazen. But I look behind me and here comes Beauchesne hopping out of this car and kind of like wafting the air in front of his face. And he just kind of looks at me and he gives me like the shush like thing. And he goes, Wade Williams is going to be so pissed. Like he literally just hotboxed his entire car. And this was like, an hour or hour and a half before he had to go ski. And, same thing. I missed the finals. He goes out there and crushes 3 at 41 or something. I was just like, that guy had a special way of things. You know?
Absolutely. And absolutely.
I feel like I've oscillated in the years of pro skiing between like how much is the right amount to like give a
damn about.
Damn. Like, sometimes you don't really know what anybody else's experience is, but you look at some people, they seem so cavalier and just like relaxed as if, they're kicking a soccer ball. Like, oh, you're up. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like for me, it's normally like too far the other way where I'm trying to like mentally rehearse or physically rehearse or just be in this exact best frame of mind that I can starting 2 days beforehand, which is far too far ahead of time.
Right.
That used to be, I guess I would get, way too heady about it way too soon. But even now, that's one of the constant difficulties is finding that very right headspace to feel like you're going to go out there, let your body be free to perform, trust your training, and just like let it rip rather than like kind of gripping and guarding and trying to ski somewhat defensively and safe.
Right.
I feel like that is a skill where I've gotten better, but also still a skill where like that might be one of the places in my pursuit of skiing where I still have room to progress. Like maybe my buoy count, that's not going to go up 4 buoys.
Right.
You know, maybe I can increase consistency, but maybe I can increase consistency in high stakes events by also kind of having I've tried having like a routine approach, so it kind of gets the same, but still those moments right before on the starting dock, they can be tricky. And I think for me for years in the ride, and trying to get better, that starstruck, I'm around these great skiers that I've read about for so long, feeling stayed with me where like I knew I was kind of at the bottom of the ladder trying to climb up. And maybe I felt a little bit like, do I really belong here, amongst the likes of Will Asher and Chris Parrish and Jamie Beauchesne.
Right.
Am I just kind of like, am I faking it here? Like, am I an imposter? And, even as I would be getting a little bit better over years, those seeds of self-doubt, I think it was almost a pattern of like showing up at the tournaments and being like, I'm going to have to ski like my very best ever ski day if I want to contend with the likes of a Will Asher.
Right.
Like it's going to have to be my best day ever. So to put that pressure on the performance of like, either this has to be my best day ever or I might as well stay home. Well, that's not productive because what's the chances of it being literally your best day ever?
Right.
And it doesn't matter how many, what do you have for breakfast and how many hours you slept the night before and if you saw your lucky star in the sky or whatever. I'm still trying to figure out, how can I come in with whatever is going on with me at the time, feel good in my body, feel good in my head, go out there and know that I'm able to hopefully ski my best that day.
Yeah, it's not an easy equilibrium, right? And it was interesting when I spoke 2 weeks ago with Adam Picus, how he mentioned how that equilibrium it becomes so important, right? So you get to a certain level, and then to be able to perform, you need the balance of all these things, like equipment, mind, body, family, relationships, physical health. Like there's so many things that have to play around and you kind of have to work on to be able to perform at a certain level, But let's backtrack a little second. You get your open rating, you get to nationals, you get your California Pro-Am, and here comes the winter. I'm guessing the season was over.
Right.
You got a little taste of what is about to come. What happens next?
Okay, yeah. So that is an interesting part of the journey. I knew that I basically needed to keep skiing because I was far from the mark.
Right.
I don't think I'd even run a 39 in practice ever at that point. And clearly showing up at California Pro-Am and watching, everybody that's going to be in the finals, take it down and seem like they have it pretty well under control. I was like, oh, like that was a wake-up moment for me. I just wasn't even clued in. I was like, I'm more than a pass away from being in a meaningful way,
in contention,
in a competitive way. Yeah. So I need to, but I had this sense of hope that was like, well, I only did this 2.5 months every summer. So if I can get in a lot of sets, like I'll maybe start to play catch up. And I certainly felt an exuberance of passion. Like I was like, I have it within me to want to do all these sets. Like I want to.
Which is a good mark. I mean, it's good to realize.
Yes. So what I did was I kind of realized everybody else lives in Florida. So I thought, okay, well, I have to move, or I at least have to be in Florida for the winter. So I started looking at how can I.
Sorry.
Yep, you good.
Get a little closer.
Yeah, get that a little. Yep. How can I make that happen? And there's a little bit of a funny story there. Freddie actually just brought it up to me and suggested that I have to tell it, and then Amelia said, well, maybe you don't, but
so we're gonna share it.
We'll at least get most of the way into it. Anyway, I started looking on Craigslist for places. At that time, I didn't really know anybody here in the Orlando area. I had my grandparents took me to Chet Raley's ski school for like 3 or 4 years in a row for just like 3 or 4 days at the end of the school year. That became a new tradition. We would go to Chet's for like 3 or 4 days, kick off the season, kind of let him give me some guidance to like try to go home and work with.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I know him. I liked him. I was like, maybe I can ski there. But of course, that was going to be very expensive. Ski school sets every set. But I knew he was also close to Okehili, and that's a place where I had been just for some nationals. And I guess I knew, a few people there and some Northeasterners that spend some time there in the winter. And it's a public park. So I thought, well, there's got to be a way I can line up some ski rides there. Maybe even some people will trade me skiing for coaching, or maybe I can even make a couple side bucks coaching. I don't know. So I started looking in that area, southern Florida, and scouring Craigslist. And I was not very encouraged at first with what I was finding. Like, the prices for rent were pretty high. I was kind of intimidated that I didn't know how I was going to keep my head above water financially going down there trying to train. But one day I came across this ad for a condo. It was like built in 2007, so it was pretty new.
Right.
It said rent $450 a month, including utilities. And it said you get one bedroom. There'll be another tenant in another bedroom. It's just 2 bedrooms and a common area, kitchen, living room. But that's all I needed. I was just trying to find I think it might have said pet friendly, which also I was looking for. I had a dog, so I was trying to find that. I was like, wow, this sounds almost too good to be true. So I immediately called the number. The guy's name was Richard. So I got him on the line, and I told him, hey, I'm calling to respond to your Craigslist ad. I'm really interested in moving down. I'd like to make a deposit if we can go forward with this thing. And he said, well, look, I'm down here I just relocated from New York. I got divorced, and I'm trying to meet, somebody. And so I'm really looking for a female roommate. And I thought,
damn.
I was like, dang, this is too good. There's nothing else. Like, everything else is twice this much money. I was like, I got to do something. So I said to him, well, all right, man. I mean, I hear you, but I was like, think it through. You're going to move somebody in. I was like, women are crazy. Like what if you move somebody in and it starts off really good, but then it goes off the rails? Like, then you're going to be really stuck in a pickle. And I kind of like tried to plant some seeds of doubt in his mind, And he's like, well, look, the first 2 respondents that already called me were women. He's like, that's kind of what I have my mind set on. So I have to give them the first offer anyway because they replied first. And I'll loop back to you if something changes. And I was like, shoot, probably got off the hook. So, but anyway, the next day I get a call back, and it's Richard. And he goes, hey, man, maybe you were right. I talked to those ladies, and they did seem a little bit crazy. He's like, so you're the only other person that responded so far. So it's yours if you want it. So I jumped at it. I packed up my life, like all my ski stuff, my dog, whatever I had, into the back of my Tahoe, drove down there in October. And also he was allowing me to rent month to month, which I thought was great. Like, this way, if I just run out of money, I'll just go home.
Yeah.
I can always do some work up in Maryland. There's a guy I can always work for to make some side money. So anyway, I get down there. Place is pretty nice. I was like, at first I didn't have a bed or anything, so I just was sleeping on a sleeping bag on a carpeted floor in the room. I Craigslisted myself a bed, but it was working out fine. I was paying $450 a month. Well, sooner or later, I started putting the pieces together of what was actually going on here. The condo that I was renting was in foreclosure because this was 2009, and everything had just gone upside down. He was illegally renting it from the guy who was in bankruptcy or foreclosure. Right. And then, since he was already under the table, he was then subletting it to me, just super under the table.
Right.
So I kind of realized that, and I was like, well, if the cops come and evict us, like, all I can say is like, hey, I don't know. I just responded to a Craigslist ad. Like, if I have to leave, then I have to leave. Like, we'll just figure it out at that time.
Right.
So it was working out pretty well. Well, here's where it just gets a little bit funnier. This is the part that Freddie's looking forward to that Amelia's not. I go home for Thanksgiving and come back, and Richard, who usually is he's not out of work, he's usually just kind of loafing around the house with his dog, just kind of wearing his underwear and a tank top or whatever, right, just milling around. he's all chipper, he's all like shaved up and cleaned up. And I was like, man, he had a good Thanksgiving. I was like, what's going on, buddy? Like, you're in a good mood. And he said, oh man, the best thing happened. He was like, I met these girls over Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving dinner together, and they're going to buy my box trailer that I brought to bring all my belongings down from New York. And I was like, oh, that's great. I know times were tough with money, and it was probably like 10 grand or something. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. He's like, no, that's not the good part. The good part is they're all porn stars, and they're moving to Las Vegas to start a internet-based reality TV show. And they want me to be a cameraman for them. And that's how they're going to pay me back for the trailer. And I was like, wait, they're buying the trailer from you, but you're going to work for them? And he was like, yeah, like he just couldn't even see it. He was so excited that this was going to be his new reality.
Right.
And literally he did go. He came back around Christmas time once because his mother and sister and daughter were living upstairs. Came back to visit, had totally changed his whole appearance, like had these big sideburns now all of a sudden.
Oh my God.
Like the designer jeans with like the big stitching on the pockets in the back, and like a big cowboy belt, and a big belt buckle, all this stuff. And I got to talking with him, and he was like, oh yeah, we've been to Kid Rock's birthday party, and they hang out with all these celebrities. And he's like, and best yet, get this, he's like, actually, I'm not just doing the cameraman. They're actually working me into some of the scenes. Like,
no.
So literally, this random Craigslist guy that I moved in with, while I was trying to live down there and train, goes off and becomes a porn star. So that is a part of my water ski journey. That's just very random.
Yeah, not to diverge too much from your journey, but have you kept in touch with the guy?
No.
No.
No, that was I mean, I wouldn't say we were like super close, and as exuberant as he was about his new career direction, it wasn't something that I really wanted to follow.
Of course.
So no, I didn't. But I wish him well. I hope it's going really well out there and that he's still making it. But anyway, as for my part,
yeah, because you were onto a very exuberant journey too. You moved to South Florida out of a Craigslist ad, trying to figure out how to ski. Like, I mean, that's already like an interesting, journey.
Yeah, and it was tricky landing there. I guess I kind of thought that like Okeechobee would just be almost like walk up to the dock, stick your thumb out like a hitchhiker, and like
Ski.
just be easy. Like everybody will just give a pull. Well, I mean, that's just not really the culture there, and I guess I can understand that to some reason. If anybody could just randomly show up at Okeechobee and ask for a ski ride, the people who are members there, it would get overrun. Like you wouldn't be able to have that. That's
right.
An unrealistic expectation. So it was a little slower approach there. So I started spending a lot of money to go and ski with Chet. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week at first, because I was like, well, I'm here to ski. Like, it's not going to do any good not skiing.
To ski. Yeah.
So and he gave me the good advice, like go to one of their club meetings, find out when they're going to do like a work party, and go volunteer. And there was one luckily coming right up. So I got to go out there and just like do random course maintenance stuff. Like they needed a swimmer to like get in the water and tie up buoys or disconnect buoys, put on new subfloats, whatever it was. So I got to do that, and I met a few people. And then from that, I met some ski buddies. I was like, okay, you can call me if you want to get a ride, or when we're out here together, I'll give you a pull. So that really helped. Started getting some rides at Okeechobee, just paying for gas, some with Chet, and then Noah Veek, who is a skier from Indiana, who now is Chet's full-time driver. He was kind of doing the same thing I was doing. He moved down to go to Florida Atlantic University and wanted to ski, and his parents let him bring down their Nautique 196 like after Christmas time. So he and I were on like the same plan. We wanted to get better. We wanted to ski a lot of sets, and so we became like really tight ski buddies. It was, I guess, a record cold winter at Okeechobee that year, but for us, like from
warm.
Indiana and from Maryland, it was great. I didn't even have a top. Patty, as in Schnitzen Patty Aston, gave me like a 10-year-old top that was completely falling apart. It was the best thing I had. I appreciated it. But I mean, we just went. We were like we'd have the lakes to ourselves someday. We'd be going from east to west onto Maine, like the things you're not really supposed to do. But I mean, like reconnecting or staying connected with just that feeling of loving to ski. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like I have to run 38 today or 39 today. We were just getting lots of sets. We were trying to work on technique. You know, Chet is a very technical kind of coach, so we were kind of looking to him for guidance of what we should be, how we should be approaching this. So it was a lot of like high repetition, a lot of 35 off that winter. I mean, I never had gotten that instruction coming along, so I felt like I really needed to break down and retool. I switched my grip. I was an upside down gripper.
Yeah.
So I switched my grip that winter. I got off the clinchers, which was even harder addiction.
Right.
I was just totally relying on falling into the line off the buoy and just letting the gloves hold me up. So, you know, and just actually gaining more control. Like I was just skiing with passion and intensity versus, okay, that maybe works with some athleticism up through 35 or something like that, but to go on.
Yeah, you need something else.
Oh, yeah. So it was a lot of trying to break things down, you know, retool. And so having Noah and having an opportunity to ski a lot of sets and then go to check in with Chet, you know, that became more sustainable once it was like a twice a month kind of thing.
Right.
You know, I did that from October until I was getting some side work. I was doing some remodeling work with Jeff Kepcha, who skis at Okehili.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice of him to put me to work, just some manual labor, laying sod, stuff, you know, painting houses, stuff like that. And then Karen Moon, who's a friend from the Northeast, had moved down there. She put me to work a little bit, like hanging her pictures in her house, like replacing all the doorknobs, setting up her garage. So I was making a little bit of side money to basically pay for gas, but my bank account balance got down to $250. And I was like, okay, that's enough money. Literally, like I paid 1 month of rent. It was coming down. Like by the end of the month, my bank account was like hitting $250. I was like, that's enough money to drive home, and I would do some architectural salvage work, like take apart old houses. There was a guy that would always put me right to work. So I can drive home, work for like 2 weeks. That'll be enough money to get me to summer, and start doing some lessons again and make some income. Oh, and okay, this is another big part of the journey. That same winter, while I was basically spending my time in Okehili Park skiing and like running around their fitness trail and trying to get in better shape, things like that, John Whitlock, who owns the lake where I live, he offered the proposition to me that if I could make a business plan and figure out how to get a ski school off the ground there at the lake,
Like up in Virginia.
In Virginia, then he would be supportive of me doing that. So that was huge. I heard the word business plan and I had spun a little bit because I didn't study business. It sounded like very intense, but I got some help from my mom, who's a lawyer, and from a couple other skiers who are lawyers and understand the liability stuff, and tried to kind of piece together a model for how the club would run. And so as I got back, and we got all the legal documents done, articles of incorporation, started an S corp and all that type of thing. That was 2010. The spring of 2010, April 23rd was the day the business was officially incorporated, and started taking in new skiers that summer and meeting new folks, expanding my coaching. So that makes this summer will be the 10-year anniversary of the ski school.
No way.
Which is kind of like at first I just kind of was like, okay, 10 years. And I was like, you know what, like that is kind of something. And more importantly, I know to someone like you and to someone like me, like part of my mission from the beginning was to grow the sport, get more people coming into skiing, getting on the lake, discovering the course and what we do, or getting more involved in competition, whatever it is. And there's just no denying in the 10 years like that has happened. Like it's hard to tell maybe 1 year to the other, like maybe there's some progress, maybe there's some more people coming out, which is important obviously for business too, but looking at those beginnings and kind of the electricity that we have going in Virginia now with skiing, it's cool to see that there's a 10-year trajectory where definitely more people are skiing and the energy around it is is strong.
Well, you also had that opportunity to have that 10-year vision that, as you said in the first part, you kind of lost, right? Like you were bumming a cigarette and go,
Oh
okay, what the
man.
hell is the 10-year vision here? And now you were given an opportunity to have a 10-year vision, right? I guess, help me out with the timing here. So you're around this winter between 2009 2010, you're at Okehili,
Yep.
the bank account is suffering a little bit,
Yep.
and then you get offered this. Well, it's still cold in Virginia, you have a few months left. So
So
what was that transition?
well, yeah. So I came home sometime in March. I ran out of money basically in Okehili. I had to come home. I worked for 2 weeks for my friend in Maryland. Working, tearing apart some old barns and houses, getting the flooring, salvaging the windows, all that, the chimneys. And then it was like April, yeah, and I didn't have a clientele really at that point.
Right.
So like when kids got out of school, I had some families. So I was, but my life was fairly inexpensive. Like when I was in Florida, I lived very plainly.
Yeah.
Like I was either at home, at Okehili, or at Chet's. I discovered some really great farmers markets that had great produce
Yep.
at a really good price. The only like luxury that I still took was like I would allow myself to go to the bar Duffy's right across the street from Okehili on Friday or Saturday night and have some beers.
Yep.
And that was like superfluous money, but everything else was just basically to ski. It was gas
Eat,
money.
ski, a place to sleep.
That was really it. And then when I got back home, similarly, as long as I could just have enough to go buy groceries, again, John Whitlock, the Whitlock family, they were making it really. They were accommodating me a lot to be able to live there and start the ski school without a tall financial burden that would have required a big loan or,
Right.
Just extended me past my limits. So it was lean, but I kind of limped it along into summer, and then, but I knew I would have people coming. I knew at least I'd have kind of a bare nucleus of skiers, and that was enough to kind of survive. And and I guess it wasn't quite yet that my grandfather kind of moved into the picture, but I was single and I didn't have a lot of needs other than to ski and to eat.
Right.
And so, yeah, I kept it simple,
Yeah.
and didn't do anything extravagant and got ready for a solid season. And yeah, I don't know that there's anything too remarkable. I guess that season was, there was a global invitational in
Yep.
Lake Placid. That was kind of the next pro tournament. There was that, and the Malibu Open started in Milwaukee, first year in Milwaukee. So I started doing those pro tournaments, and I guess my granddad was starting to come around and stay with me some because he was at both of those events. So he was also helping me a bit financially at that time to, like, if we would travel together, he would pick up the travel costs,
Oh, wow.
or at least a lot of them. The gas to, like, we drove, I think, to Michigan and Milwaukee, and like hotels and eating out. I mean, I had some pride, so I was like trying to pay for stuff, but he would be like, no, come on, it's let me get this, and that was just such an extension of my childhood, of us going to tournaments like states, regionals, a little road trip together in a hotel and a meal out. That it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't like it was not patronizing. He was doing it out of the kindness of his heart, and it certainly was really helping me a lot to make those trips possible. So that also kind of kept me, branching out, able to do some of these, basically show up, pay my entry fee, and get my teeth kicked in, and go back to the drawing board and be like, oh my gosh, these guys are so good.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with this? And then, but try to be inspired by it. Try to go back to practice with a passion, with dedication. Retool and try to continue to get better. And I mean, I feel like that's basically still the pattern. Maybe not such difficult, trying experiences at the tournaments, but I guess still a lot of those too. Our expectations change. You expect to do better, and then when you don't, it's just as painful.
Yeah, you get your first final, then now you expect to be in the final.
Yeah.
You get your first podium, now you expect to be on the
Right.
podium.
Right.
You get that score, now you expect that score.
Exactly. But and I'm sure it must have been the same for you. Like, so continuing on our timeline anyway, to stay on the story, that summer was great. New skiers came out. My skiing got better. I got whipped pretty hard on the pro tour scene, but I guess honestly I didn't expect too much differently. Like, it was disappointing at the times, especially if I didn't ski as well. If I got too nervous and like kind of choked, then that would be disappointing. But
Were you now just running some 39s? Like, what was the
yeah,
skiing level?
yeah, I think by that time I was starting to like kind of pick them off, but they were, I think it was a good streak if I was running like 139 per set, in practice. Like, I was getting through 38, yeah, regularly, but a lot of mid 39s, and then like the occasional like get it done. And but then of course you go to the tournament and you expect it's going to be your best day, and because you have the capacity to run it, like somehow it's going to magically happen, um, which is a false notion, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there was actually a couple times that summer I skied decently. I got some deep 39s. I don't know. My first 39 in a pro tournament I know came the next season, so it didn't happen that year.
But did you run it in a record tournament or similar that year?
Yes, again at the very end of the season, very end of the season, I had run it, I guess, in a C class the year before. I ran it in a record, and then I had one like amazing round at the very end of the year, my last tournament of the year. I got a 3 at 41, like out of the blue. It happened in practice a couple of times, but like just had like the amazing one ball. And like before I even knew what happened, like I was like slingshotting off of 2 and
Wow,
S-turned.
it's a big score, man.
Big score. Like it probably took me a whole another year to equal it.
Yeah.
But it sent me into the off season of like, no, and then I could believe in myself again. Like, wow, I can do this. And it lined up to where that off season, that's when Gordon Rathbun offered me the position of on-staff coach in Acapulco. So then I had another way to go through the winter and ski and chase the sun, which is basically where my head was. Like, I still need to get a lot better to be competitive, so I better go.
Yeah, so you had a good season, you had a place to ski, now you had a place to run a ski school, but eventually it gets cold. Yep. And you're still on that path of like, I need to be competitive. Like, how do I make this happen?
Yeah, and I thought maybe I would try to do the same thing, like go back to... Actually, I was setting up plans for that. I was going to try to rent a room from Noah and ski with him at Okehila. That was kind of in the works, and he was opening up that possibility. He was living down there, so that was what it was looking like, which was a good option. But then to be offered a job at a place called Ski Paradise, it just sounded like too much of a dream. I was like, oh, I have to go for this. And I'd been there for a week, and it's very luxurious and very, exactly like what I would try to script for myself. So I couldn't believe it. It kind of came about maybe in August or September. I was offered that, and then to move down in November.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
So, that it felt like magic. It felt like one more like a turn that I needed on this journey. And indeed it was. I mean, it was a great opportunity to ski a lot of sets. Yeah. I mean, I was basically getting paid in skiing and room and board. And also I got to develop a very extensive network because people are coming through there from all over the U.S., Canada,
Europe,
other places, even Australians. So I got to meet a whole lot of people, which has, it's just, that's part of what we love as skiers.
Yeah.
Just make the friendships, make those connections. But then also as someone trying to run a ski school, just having your feelers out further, even just word of mouth, even if it's somebody that lives far away but is not coming. Just like, oh yeah, I know somebody. You're going to Washington D.C. Oh, maybe you could go ski with Corey. He's not that far away.
Right.
I met him in Mexico, and he was fun to ski with. You know, whatever. So that also was really helpful. But I did run into, that I skied now through 2 full winters and 2 full summers. First time in my whole life doing that. And at Ski Paradise, it's kind of like Groundhog Day because the week is basically the same format. You serve the same food on the same days. You kind of do the same activities on the same days, which they're all good things. And I'm certainly not complaining. They are all wonderful. But then a new group of guests, and
Yeah.
everybody that shows up is ready to have the time of their life. Like, this is going to be the best week. I'm at Ski Paradise, and they want to ask 1,000 questions about skiing and how does everything work. And most of the, coaching, whatever, 7 hours a day, and then a lot of the dinner table conversation is like skiing, skiing, skiing. Everyone's so enthusiastic, and I'm trying to maintain that same level with them. But week after week, everyone coming in is new. I'm the same. So over 6 months of that, and coming off of a year and a half, never having skied for such a long time, I was starting to experience some burnout.
Yeah.
But I wasn't recognizing it. I wasn't conscious of it at first because I just didn't believe that it was possible for me. Like, I loved skiing so much. I love skiing so much. The idea couldn't, I couldn't see it in the mirror that I was burned out. I was just noticing I was more tired and irritable, and, I wasn't as excited about my own skiing at first.
Right.
And I was like, what's going on here? Why am I in such a funk with things? Eventually I did kind of, and then of course I had to come back home straight into like my own business and ski school and get that up and off the ground and running. So that was my first experience with learning that I probably will love this for my whole lifetime, but the level of passion, you do have to continue to reconnect with why you love it in the first place and what got you started and why you're doing it the way you're doing it at any given time, and that will change. It can't be the same. It can't be, I love it because I get the most buoys, or I love it because I just love coaching. And
even within the skiing, what you start to love more, which might be different to what it was 2 years ago. And it's really interesting. This parallels a lot. By the time this episode will come out, the interview with Mario Pigozzi will be out. And he has a very similar story of how he was working in the Ivory Coast as a tourist club, and that's how he got into skiing. But he also had to do all the activities and the acting and the singing, and it was kind of Groundhog Day every week, but you had to be, by requirement, stoked and happy and cordial. And kind of the question, how does this lake come about? Oh, it's so interesting. Nobody has ever asked me that. Like this sort of stuff where you have to continuously show curiosity and interest and stoke. That's not extremely sustainable. I mean,
well, at 100%, like pedal to the metal passion.
Exactly.
I didn't recognize that wasn't sustainable. Like, that was my strategy. Like, when you said about having a 10-year vision, when I started the ski school, my 10-year vision was just like, throw yourself at this with everything you've got, and hopefully it will work out. It wasn't measured, it wasn't thought out, like, where am I going to be with this in 10 years? It was just like, I will be happy with this in 10 years, I assume.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, like, do everything I can to enjoy it, make it the best. And that wasn't a bad place to start. I mean, I wouldn't change anything. That certainly was good for a lot of the relationships and that I've formed and whatever. But I did eventually have to realize, okay, that's not sustainable, and you do have to give yourself some breaks and learn the skill of reconnecting with your passion. I feel like maybe over the years now, I've been through several iterations of, okay, things are feeling a little bit stale and stagnant. Yeah. Like, okay, I need to take a step back and relearn, or come back to this with a fresh feeling, with fresh passion, and then start charging again. But anyway, on the linear story, I came back from Mexico. My first ever prize money and first ever 39 in a pro tournament was the Sacktown Gold Rush at Short Line Lake. Went to that one. It was pretty early in the season, and love skiing there. It's a great spot, and had one of my better tournament. Had my best tournament to that point. Like, at least skiing close to my ability, and I think I got a couple at 41 or something like that. It was enough for what did I finish? Like, I think 6th place, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at 6th place, maybe. I feel like I got a big check, Anyway, that was like first prize money. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best $900 I've ever made.
Right,
I
right,
got to ski and they're giving me money. This is insane. So that
right.
was that first feeling of like making a final and, oh, I want to get this feeling again. I want to show up and ski and get in a final and they pay me the money instead of just shelling it out.
So I've asked this to a few guests, but like, was this the moment where you realized that you were good? Or was there a moment before? Was it that nationals? Maybe it was later on. Like you must have had a moment that where you went like, because you're one of the best skiers in the world, you must have had a moment where you thought, okay, wow, I'm starting to get good at this.
Well, I think what it's been for me is always a feeling of that I'm on the raw side, that I kind of I came up in this public water, kind of unconventional for pro skiing type of approach. Not always the right equipment, just lots of heart, lots of passion, lots of scrap, and that um, given this, given more opportunity to ski on better conditions, better equipment, I would close the gap like that. I had this kind of default belief in potential, um, you know, for right or for wrong, that kind of was there the whole time. And I feel like even now it's still um, that's still my main driving force, I would say, especially when I run into a period of time where maybe I'm not skiing as well or I'm trying to struggle to find my motivation. I still feel like my best skiing is ahead of me. I still feel like I have not, um, like I know there's flaws in my technique. I know that there's some fundamental deficiencies that I can still work on and fix. Um, we've been joking a lot because our friend Freddie turned 30 years old, and I'm
Yeah.
34. I realize that this doesn't last forever, but I feel very fortunate that, unlike a lot of our friends that we know that have blown out their back and just simply really cannot do it at the high level with as much torque and intensity as running through your body, that's not happening for me. I mean, I definitely feel it. My body's very aware that these things are happening, but I'm getting better at staggering the training, recovering,
Yeah.
trying to get ahead, in more targeted ways with strengthening the hips and the core and the low back and mobilizing those things all through the season, trying to take care and keep that moment away. I hope that my best skiing still lies somewhere ahead of me. And so there was no one moment that was like a trigger that was like, oh, I really can do this. I feel like I'm still connected to that same feeling of like, where is the end point? Like, where do I max out? And I could be wrong. Like, maybe that already has happened. And if so, I have to be ready to accept that, I guess. And the journey that it's been, the 10 years, and ongoing. Like, now it's a
Yeah.
lifestyle. Now I
Yeah, of
have
course.
built my career around the ski school thing. We're doing a big project at home now to add facilities to the ski school. So we're kind of doubling down there. Like, that's something I'm going to stay involved with and will be part of my ongoing journey no matter what happens with pro skiing. We want to start a family. So how is that going to change the nature of traveling around with
Right.
pro events and things like that? And what priority will training and dedication to, like, fours and fives at 41 don't happen if you're a weekend warrior or you're mainly playing dad and you're trying to do some skiing. So I'm trying to mentally figure out, okay, what's that going to look like? How's that
Yeah.
going to be? And prepare for that time ahead. But there's not a part of me that's throwing in a towel and saying my best days are definitely behind. So
Yeah.
I still, whatever, like that child in me that looked at the magazine and was like, oh my gosh, I want to be like these guys. Um, there's still a part of me that's like, okay, you're doing better. You've been improving, and it's been kind of like this steadily upward in 10 years, but you're not there yet.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed, we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting because um, I can see just by the way you got in the sport and remained in the sport, even like you decided to do the sport that you loved. I can see how you must have acknowledged along the way maybe some points are like, okay, this is getting better or this is getting better, but never like that thought that Kris thought of like, wow, I'm getting good at this, or I'm getting, this was really good.
No,
Not even when you ran 41, because I mean, dude, you're one of the only ones in history that ran 41. You must have felt something there.
Oh, I mean, I felt a lot of things. I mean, that's a major, major highlight, and it's a memory that I will always have. And
give us the details
of that time.
Yeah.
So it was a LaPoint record in November. It was a really strange, it was a transitional time in my life. My granddad had just passed away in that August, actually, in this very motorhome where we're sitting right now. So it was like just over 2 months since he had passed. He was such a big part of my daily life and experience. I was basically orbiting around him and his needs at that point, and the two of us basically were operating a very co-tethered life, and my wife Amelia was part of that. So when all of a sudden, when he passed away and that gravity ceased to have a influence on my life, I felt in one way kind of very untethered. I felt like, whoa. Another part felt kind of light because it had become a lot of things to do, a little bit of a heavy burden. But the one thing that as far as this journey of water skiing and staying connected to it, he passed away in the summer at a tournament, and I knew he would want me to keep skiing. And it's something that like that very day we were at a tournament. I ended up skiing in the tournament because it was a very surreal day. Like it was right. One of those days, it only happens a couple of times in your life that you have such a impactful event take place, and kind of by surprise. So I still skied. I went out first thing. I didn't think about it. No preparation, no mental preparation or anything. I ran 3 1/4 at 41 just because it was like the only thing that day that felt normal. Like I was in control and I knew what I was doing. Like I got on my ski and got out there, and skiing just made sense to me. Just like, okay, I know this. I can do this. Everything else is that's going on is super strange. So it's kind of the inverse. Like sometimes I get on the dock at a pro event and your head goes like sideways, it goes scrambling all over the place and you're not in control. But this was the opposite. Like I felt that way off the water about kind of the state of affairs of life. But then I got on the water like, okay, just ski, just do this. And so, I lined up a bunch. I was skiing pretty well. I started skiing, better. Some of the best skiing that I've done. So I started signing up for a bunch of records because I was running 41 a lot in practice, which was pretty new. I mean, I picked off a couple here and there, but it was like coming. So I got in the motorhome here, and I spent nearly a month, I think, down here in Florida. I did a record at Fluid. I did one at Okeechobee. So the week before LaPoint, I was at Okeechobee. I had a round where I was behind Chad. It was the last round of the tournament, and I had a pretty good start, and I got 4. And he said afterward, he's like, man, I thought you had that one. And I was like, it's such a fine line. Like it was going good, but like 4 was a little safer, and it was a good score to get in the books. And maybe mentally I just wasn't there for the whole pass. But now having had that one, the following week at LaPointe, there was nothing to lose. But the first round, I felt pretty good, but I fell at 1 ball at 39. I was like, just like a 1 ball overturned blowout. I was like, okay, well, that's annoying. Right. Wait around for the kind of round 2. Round 2 felt pretty good, but I did the exact same thing, but at 41. I was like going for a big 1 ball turn, too much. Like there I was in the water at 1 ball. I'm like, oh, come on. And then last round, I think I was just about the last skier of the day. Will Asher and Chris Parrish had been there, but they got pretty good. They skied well. I think they at least 3 or 4 at 41 already, and it was getting later. They went home, and so I was maybe with the last one left in open at the end of the day. Sun's going down. I'd skied with also Lucky Lowe the first and only time ever that week. I was down here in the motorhome. Everyone says you have to ski with Lucky sometime. Yep. You have to have that experience. So I went over, and he did give me the full tour of the goats and his house. And we skied the 12 buoy course at 41. He was yelling at me and whistling. I mean, everything you would hope for. He gave me a lot of, if nothing else, energy and passion.
Stoke,
and some things to talk about. I mean, he was in it to win it.
going back to the thing of like, how do we recreate the passion? How would you rediscover? Seems to me like a set of Lucky's is a good. It'll give you some things to find passion from.
Yeah, it was just super cool. I mean, he didn't have like he wouldn't charge me. I tried to pay him. He just like nope. And so anyway, it comes to this last round. I'm making my way through my warm up passes, and here's Lucky on the far corner at LaPoint's, just standing with his jean shorts and a beer, no shirt. Every time I pass by, he's like fist pumping, like run 32 off, and I just look at him. He's over there like fist pumping me, like sending me the stoke. I was like, all right, Lucky. Like, it kind of made me chuckle. I dropped, and got down, ran 39. Lucky's over there, like throwing the fists at me, like, come on. And it's just it turned out to be one of those passes. Like, this would be another example of the flow state. Like, almost coming off the right-hand gate buoy, kind of knew something special. Like, ooh, okay.
Right.
Good look at one. There's the connection. Like, turned pretty hard this time, but the rope's right there. Right rhythm right off of one ball, and then two, almost I'd say it happened like without even a thought, like automatic, happened very fast, and I'm on my way to three. And that's where I feel like sometimes it's kind of like if you blank out, if your head's not in the game and you're not like on thinking about being on the line, you have to run to run that second half of the pass, you may be done at three, or maybe you can pull along to four, but somehow in that moment or whatever approaching three, I didn't lose my mind and be like, oh my gosh, this is it, and freak out and with excitement and blow it. But also I didn't kind of just like lackadaisically let it go, moved out off the wakes better to three, connected. So then in my mind, then it kind of was like, hey, this might be happening. Like, this is what it feels like in practice when you run it, those thoughts that we have that happen really quickly. And having that four, I was like, okay, you have to stay committed here. This is not like go over there and get around four and then see if you can get the line and go to five. Like, you're turning this
the game
all
now.
Or nothing, like, basically. So four ball worked out, and going to five, I pretty well knew like that's a more reliable turn for me, typically a 1-3-5 than a 2-4, and
So no five-itis.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen sometimes.
No, but I mean in that set.
In that moment, no, it was more of a calculation of like, don't do anything crazy and get wound up. Like, let it, if you have to run past the ball just a moment, and then kind of follow through when you still can get to six. Like the slightest bit safe, which you can't go very much. You can't really change at 41, but like just realizing not to overdo it, basically.
Yeah.
And that you can pull long to six. So a little bit of long pull to six, a little bit of take a hit, which probably only came from safetying five. Before that, it was basically you have to be on that correct line.
Right.
Oh, man. And so then a feeling like, yes, it was very validating. Like the whole experience with my granddad had been a journey of its own. It kind of brought me to this point where I felt like a lot of these sets in the fall carrying on afterwards, like it was my skiing was almost a connection point with him, or like just a departure point from the uncertainty about the rest of my life. And so to kind of have that experience come together right then, it was very validating. And maybe I was somehow freed from other constraints at that time that allowed that to happen. I've done it one time since, but it's not like it's happening all the time. Like that's in my mind afterwards. Kind of back to our original point. I was like, well, okay, this is amazing. Like I feel great about doing this, but like I can't rest on my laurels because there are other skiers that are doing it more still.
That's unbelievable. That's a crazy. Like I mean, it's a super interesting mindset. Like your thoughts were like, okay, well, that's really good, and you were stoked. I'm sure you had a good day.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Yes.
But there's people doing it more times.
Yeah.
There's people that got to. Did you get 1 at 43?
One.
1 at 43.
I kind of just planned on. I wasn't going to try anything too tricky and go for the half. I wanted just full one, guarantee that, just come back to the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very telling, man. That's very telling that like your thought went there. Like, I mean, I'll be honest. I've never done it, but if I were to do it, my thoughts were like, I'm in history. I'm one of those that did it. Oh my God, like, but yours, I'm sure was like that, but it's also like, Well, but there's people doing it more times.
Yeah.
And there's people getting to 2 F43.
I feel like that's all of us skiers though, right? Like on your best day, you finally get that PB that you dreamed about. Like, oh, that would be the be all and end all. If I just run 28 off,
Right.
if I just ever run 20 off, I'll be happy. And I can.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you do it, you know, you're just like, oh, I think I could do a little bit more, or I could do that again, or whatever. And so it was that I was elated that day. You know, I went out with Kris and Jen and a group from the tournament, and you know, we celebrated, and you know, I was skiing on Mapple at the time, so it was good. Like that actually really helped me and Kris develop a little more of a rapport. I started skiing there a little bit in the winters, which was great for me. But even by the drive home, that was the last tournament of the year too. It was like the last round, last tournament of the year. Yeah, even driving home, I did a little podcast with Marcus, and that kind of surfaced. You know, he was like, "Well, you know what?" I was like, "Well, look, you know, we got other people doing this on a somewhat regular basis, so I'm happy, but I can't say that I'm like fully satisfied. Like I got to figure out." Like in that moment, it didn't feel that hard. In that moment, it felt like, okay, it's possible. How do I make that moment happen again? Well, I guess I'm still in that journey, like in that process, trying to figure out. But it was validating. I would say it helped me have less of that self-doubt of like, am I an imposter in this community? Like I'm a latecomer, kind of from an outsider, different, you know, area that's not all hardcore skiing. Like, okay, I was like, oh. Since then, I've felt a little more comfortable in my skin. Like, okay, there is a place at this table for me. I'm one of the guys. Like, I can accept that in myself. So
wow.
It's been, yeah, on the one hand, like this belief in potential that's internal, that I'm always trying to awaken and try to pursue. But then on another level, you know, there's always doubt about, you know, if you really belong, if you really can be the best. Because like that experience, I'm like, oh, I should be able to recreate this, and you know, I would like to get a pro win. Like I want to be able to do this when it counts the most, when all of the other top skiers in the world are there, and everyone skis great and great scores, and I have the best score because I am able to bring that out of myself. But I'm still engaged in that journey. Like I have not had that happen. So, you know, I feel like that's still something out in front to be reaching for and striving for, and it's a motivator.
For sure.
You know?
Well, I mean, it's a humongous score, and as you know, like there's not very many people that can claim that they did it. What are some of the other highlights?
Well,
for you, you know.
Well, I feel like it'll be easy to remember to get back to like maybe some big score highlights, but it's reminded me. I was also requested another story by Freddie while we took our little break.
Why is he trying to influence our conversation?
Well, it is a good one.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to lose it because you know, I feel like maybe podcast listeners are curious about the life of a pro water skier because it's so unconventional. It's not covered.
Right.
You know, it's not like even in the Olympics where a lesser known sport, they do a profile on the athletes and they give some background. So, I mean, I appreciate this format to be able to kind of story tell. But so one good story that's come up along the way that's part of the pro skiing journey is at some point when I started qualifying for Worlds, you have to go onto the anti-doping, like the WADA, World Anti-Doping Administration, and the USADA, the USA's anti-doping, to make sure you're not taking steroids or anything like that. Well, so I guess I got my scores up to the top 20, qualified for Worlds. I get some email that's like, oh, your national governing body has signed you up. You have to get into the testing pool and fill out the stuff. So it actually turned out to be the year that I was out for the whole season with my ACL. I didn't ski all summer, but I was going to ski Worlds hopefully in November in Chile. It was going to be my first Worlds at the Mirandas. And I've been filling out my whereabouts so they know where I am, I guess. But I'd kind of forgotten about it because I wasn't training, I wasn't skiing. No one had showed up. So I was actually at my mom's house for her birthday, right outside of Washington, D.C. It's July, around July 16th. And it was Sunday morning. My mom and Amelia and I had gotten up to do yoga together, you know, like 9 in the morning, 8:30, 9 in the morning, something like that. We're about good 35, 40 minutes into a nice yoga float. Knock at the door. Like, oh, okay, well, we'll just stop for a second. My mom goes and answers the door to her house, and some guy says, hey, this is Eric from USADA. I'm here to drug test Corey. And she was like, what? Like, I probably hadn't told her about that is maybe
That
something that
aspect,
happens. So she brings him in, and he takes out his little briefcase, and he explains, okay, now we're in the testing session. You know, you can't leave my site from this point forward. And he explains like the protocol. Here's a cup. You know, you have to fill it with urine up to this line, and then we're gonna pour it in these 2 test bottles, and that's it. Once you fill that up, then I'll be on my way, and I'll leave you guys to doing what you're doing. I was like, okay, this is weird, and I was a little nervous because I didn't understand about testing for in competition versus out of competition. I mean, obviously, I had not been doing any steroids, but I hadn't been in competition, and even as recently as the night before, I wasn't sure if everything that I was putting in my body was up to code.
standards.
Yeah, so I was nervous right away. I got really nervous. I was like, oh boy. And my mom and Amelia knew that too, so they were kind of like nervous for me. So we put obviously a total hold on the yoga. We started making some coffee, cut up a pineapple, and the guy shows me this cup, and I looked at it, and I was like, that doesn't look like too much. Like, okay, maybe let's just go. Let me go take care of this. I was like, here, let me try. And he's like, well, I have to be with you. And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, weird. I was like, he's like, yeah, just don't worry. He's like, I do it all the time. It's nothing unusual. So we walk into the bathroom together. He stands in the bathtub, kind of crosses his arms, and he's like staring at me, getting ready to pee. So like I started getting ready to go, and he goes, no, pants below the knees, shirt above the nipples. And I go, oh man, like talk about like humiliating, just like dehumanizing. I was like, oh geez, okay, this is awkward. So I get my pants all the way down, shirt all the way up. I'm like, here's the life of a pro athlete, I guess. So and then I started, I had to pee a little bit, but I overestimated how much, or I underestimated the size of the cup, and it was not enough. But he's like, that's okay, just save it. We can add some more to this. And I was like, okay, weird. So like we reemerge back to the kitchen where my mom and Amelia are hanging out. Now it's super awkward. Like they're like, oh my gosh, this guy just watched you pee. Like, we're trying to make small talk with them. We're just knocking back some coffee. Well, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. I get a little coffee going in me.
Yep.
Next thing, I get this distinct rumbling in my stomach, and I turn to this guy, Eric, and I'm like, hey, listen, buddy, I got to go to the bathroom again here, but, it's not something you want to be party to. Like, we can just wait and do the urine stuff later. He's like, no, literally.
Like, it needs to happen now.
You can't leave my site. It doesn't. He's like, you might as well collect some urine. I have to be with you. You can't be out of my site now that the testing is open.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding. And he's like, hey, it's nothing I haven't seen before. And I was like, well, try me. But so off we go to the bathroom. We take the cup. I sit down, go about my business, get a little bit more into the cup, but not enough still.
No.
He's standing in the bathtub, like crossed arms watching. I was just like, oh my gosh, I've never been in such a strange situation. And long story short, after about another 20 minutes, 30 minutes of hanging out, it's just the way my constitution works. I had to do the same thing all over again. I was like, all right, buddy, like round 2, here we go. That time, at least we filled the cup to the adequate level, got to proceed with the
signing and watching them, yes, putting them in the bottles.
Doing all of that, and he got to go. But I was still super nervous. One, I was just rattled because it was an experience unlike I'd ever had. Some other adult man watching me take a pee and 2 poops. Like I was like, man, this is a strange day already. And I was nervous because I didn't know if I would pass, but turned out to be fine.
Okay, good.
So that was a nice little off the water highlight that kept my season of injury, a little bit exciting. And that's for you, Freddie. I know you're going to be listening, so that's the story that you wanted. But
in terms of on-water highlights?
On-water highlights. Oh, boy. Gosh.
I mean, we've already highlighted a couple, but like any other that stands to mind?
Yeah. I think one of them was the U.S. Open prelims actually at Travers. There was a super high cut. I think it was that same fall after my granddad had passed, and the cut ended up being Casey Wilson and I actually, my first time coming to the boarding school was that week. I came and skied with Brooks and KC, and we went to the tournament kind of together, and we ended up tying with 3 1/4 at 41. That was his first time to 4-ball in a pro event, and might have been my first time to 4-ball in a pro event. Anyway, we had to run off, and he left the door wide open for me. He went down. He went first and went down at 1 at 39, like overturned it. But it was just like, that was a big finals cut. And then the next day we transitioned out to Lake Ivanhoe.
Yep.
And I actually wasn't feeling very good that day, and but still managed like a 4th place. So like that was a good one. Like I just remember that it was a very intense prelims, you know, to kind of like get on through.
Getting to a piece of 4 to make it
to make
through.
it, yeah.
That's insane.
Casey got a piece of 4 and didn't make it through.
Yeah, that's
you know?
That's at least the highest I've ever heard. Yeah.
That was a crazy one. And then, I mean, I feel like so many of the highlights for me have come at events kind of off the water. I have a harder time, you know, putting together like this was the one. I think back a lot of times more to when I was a kid. You know, it was a different type of energy on the dock, but very much parallel. And here's a highlight, not in my pro career, but boys 2. I was 12 years old. When I was a kid, I only went to nationals like 3 times. When I was the oldest, at the top of the age group of boys 1, top of the age group of boys 2, top of the age group of boys 3. It just wasn't something that we put into our yearly planning to always be at nationals. We try to go when maybe I would have a good chance. And in 1998, I drove down with my grandparents. My mom flew in, and my dad flew in, which I think that was maybe the only water ski tournament he'd ever come and seen me ski in. You know, he was kind of a long distance dad, so wasn't really involved in all the ski stuff, but he flew in for that one, and I had kind of one of those days right up to my very top potential. I ran 2 at 32 off, and I probably was seated, you know, maybe like 10th, but I had a really good day and held the lead to the very last. The top seed was Tyler Boyd.
Yep.
And he went out. I think he ran 3 or maybe 4, and knocked me off. But I finished second, which is to this day my highest finish in the nationals. And
okay.
It was special, like that. My dad was there too, and my mom and my grandparents. It was not very frequently, I'd say, especially by the time I was about 12 years old, that my mom and dad and grandparents, we'd all be together. So to have that happen and to do well, to have as good of a finish as I probably was going to have, that's a very memorable
for sure
highlight.
For sure.
Yeah. And then kind of similarly, not pro tournament stuff, but the last time I skied nationals as not open, like in men's 1, I made a real road trip out of it with some friends. Like, picked them up in Charleston, drove to Okeechobee, and was basically kind of right out of college. I think it was the year that I graduated. These were some college friends that I scooped up, and so we were just, you know, I was doing like the Jamie Beauchesne plan more, like I was like fully partying, not thinking anything about the tournament, and just enjoying being with my friends. I thought back to that tournament so many times at pro events where like I'm already nervous the night before at the hotel, like obsessing about what I'm going to pick out for dinner to make sure it's the right thing.
Right.
Like that night before that nationals, like we were up, you know, I was up playing shuffleboard with them at the hotel, drinking beer at like 12:30 before they went out to some clubs in West Palm, and I did go to bed then, but like without a care.
You drew the line there, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, well, yeah, I don't need to be going out to clubs with you guys, but you know, we were just like partying up until then, and like I ran pretty good score for me, like almost ran 38, got 3rd place.
Wow.
You know, and I actually had to do a runoff to hold it, and then we all went off partying to Miami all night. You know, like it was just like it was a great experience. Like I remember that as like the whole trip, and I would say the same thing is kind of true for a lot of my travels for pro events. Like they were a lot of meaningful car rides or airplane trips, like with my granddad, and like trying to go and do those tournaments together, um, and make enjoyable and memorable experiences between the two of us, despite whatever was going to happen on the water.
Yeah.
And I got to meet, I got to know, I guess, you and other people, other skiers, in those times off the water, at the hotel or at the skier meetings or randomly at dinner, and those really stick out in my mind much more prominently. Maybe I don't have like a strong enough highlight reel to like, oh yeah, like won that U.S. Open, or won that Moomba. Like some memorable finals, like making the cut in Moomba is cool. I've got to do that a few times in ski, on the Yara. I've done well in Australia. I had like a good finish at Latrobe. I wish that event was still going on. Like I had a third place behind Freddie and Nate there one time. That was,
oh wow,
yeah. Actually, it was they did a head-to-head, and we had to actually ski for the third place. It was me and Thomas, and that was a good like head-to-head battle it out for third. So that's like a good memorable one.
But one of the things that I'm noticing is that, as you mentioned, the memorable ones, you always spoke a lot about the people and the trip and who you were with, and who have been some of those key people. I think we touched on it on a few.
But, well, I tell you who I always enjoy traveling with, because it keeps the mood pretty light, and it's going to be a fun time whether you ski well or not, is Nick Parsons.
Oh man, Nicolino.
He's a great travel partner. He's very easygoing, so it's not like, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that, or if you don't turn the lights off at 8:30, I'm going to be pissed.
Right.
He's more the opposite. Like he's probably going to be out at the bar later, coming in. So I've had some really great times with him. We stayed together in the Worlds in Paris. We stayed together in Milwaukee, in Canada a number of times. So I always enjoy his company, and hopefully we have more of those ahead of us.
What about in terms of those people that you would say shaped you into the skier you are today?
So we're taking a turn, slightly different subject then, right?
Well, no, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like the people that really, what I said is, you always mention the people that were with you at these highlights, and I think it's telling of how you got into skiing and how you skied for forever, really. Like it was about the people, the community, yes, there is a bit of competition, but it's also like I want you to ski well. So clearly, the people aspect of the sport has been important to you, because as you said, like it's so easy in this sport to get in your own lane and worry about your own thing, and I mean, with the due balance, it never seems like you got there. So clearly some key people have been shaping you into the skier that you are.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, it's definitely like my immediate family. So my mom and my grandparents would be number one, because as you know, as a coach and as a sports psychologist, like that imprint is going to be really strong. Had they been always like push, you have to achieve this level or this benchmark or whatever, the passion might have been, I might have lost it completely.
We wouldn't be chatting right now.
We probably wouldn't. Yeah. I was always begging for like more, like, please send me to a ski school. Please, let's go to this tournament. And they were very supportive. Like, so I certainly appreciate that. And I appreciate even more that they didn't get swept up in the achievement part and vicariously getting some satisfaction from my skiing or something like that. But I do have a clear memory of my very first tournament ever. My mom, my granddad, my uncle, and I all signed up together. Went there together, and like just before I started getting nerves, because it's something new. I was 8 years old. It was 1994. I was like, oh man, I don't know what this is gonna be. Like I was just kind of freaking out, and I'll never forget it. My granddad said, "Hey, look, just go out there, have some fun. Remember, win, lose, or draw, you're our guy." And that became a refrain that he would say to me over the years. Like I remember it very well, not because of that time, but he would come back. If it was a nationals or a regionals or something like that, you know, if I start getting nervous, he'd always have that kind of steady voice to be like, hey, win, lose, or draw, you're our guy. And I really felt that. And like my grandma was just like a nurturing, nourishing type of grandmother. She was just 100% in my corner. Didn't matter what. Like if I had a bad day, like she was just gonna hug me extra tight. Like that's just the kind of grandmother that she was. And also like my mom, just, you know, in those childhood years, nobody really had a clear window into my mind. We were very connected. We, you know, we could speak and communicate very clearly with each other. So similar kind of thing. Like if I was nervous, I could talk to her about it. She actually was studying psychology. She was planning to be a psychologist.
We talked about it at your event.
Oh yeah,
in October.
Yeah. Until she got pregnant and had a little change of plans in life, she was going to be a psychologist. But anyway, you know, she was always very dialed in with me, and that helped, you know, in the preparation side or in the afterwards, or just kind of like in the general life balance side. Like she never let my obsession, my desire, like my passion for skiing, she kind of pulled on some reins and maybe kind of kept a balance that allowed me to feel unbridled and run free when I made the choice as a 23-year-old adult to do that. But who knows, you know, had they wanted to just add rocket fuel to my passion at age 10, I could have burned out as a younger person and not be sitting here. It's really hard to say, but I appreciate the way that they kind of shaped and guided my path, and that we did it as a family, and that kind of came first and foremost. If you had a bad day, I still wanted my granddad to ski well. Right. You know, if he had a bad day, he still wanted my mom to ski well. So that was just so incubated into my experience of what it was to ski and have ski partners. And like you said, we do see that pretty broadly in the community. But they were very formative and shaping. And, you know, then I'd say as like the big name, the A-lister kind of mentors, I feel really lucky that I got to ski with Andy for a period of time when he started doing Mapple skis. I'd met him in Acapulco. Yep. You know, and we developed a nice rapport, and he invited me to come down here to Orlando ski on his ski when he started doing it, and was very generous with his time with me and trying to set me up on the ski. And I was just like, well, I'm not walking away from this opportunity. Like I can ski with Andy some. I'm going to take that. So I'm really thankful to have gotten to know him a little bit more than just at the level of shaking his hand at the tournament and getting to ask him a couple of questions or whatever. Interestingly, he actually passed away on the same day as my grandfather. It was really strange. They died on the same day. Wow. So yeah, strange connection. Usually Dina reaches out to me first, but we always make sure that we, you know, kind of share some messages at least on that day. So it was a surprise for both of us for sure. Right. More so Andy, of course. But so Andy, and then another one has been Kris, LaPoint. Yep. You know, I feel like at first I was really intimidated by him because one of his stature in the sport, just being such a legend, and I feel like Kris always has so many gears turning in his mind about whatever project he's kind of working on, whether it's his ski or maybe he's got a real estate deal going. I feel like he can hold a couple different things in there and be processing at the same time, but he has an intensity about being deep in thought that is kind of visceral, like you encounter when you're talking to him, and at first, before you know that he's actually like just the kindest, most tender-hearted guy, he's big and strong, and he's a great skier, and he kind of, you know, he does approach life with a purpose. Like he's a man of purpose.
That's for sure.
And you detect that right away. And so like at first I was a little bit kind of just like, I don't even know, I don't want to upset this guy. Like he's got important things clearly going on in his mind, and I'm just little me. Right. But the more I got to be around him and got to know him, you know, I just saw that that's part of his personality, and towards me and towards the other people at his club and stuff like that, I've never seen him be anything but super generous. And here's somebody who's been the best in the world, always wants to help somebody else, whether it's help them adjust their fin or give them a tip or just give them a ski ride, make sure they get their best possible, you know, ride. So Yeah, Andy and Kris were definitely kind of two mentors that I'm so glad that I've had the chance to get to know in this sport, and people that I looked up to that I got to later meet,
Yeah.
and be around. And then another one that's kind of the generation younger um, would be definitely Marcus and Chris Rossi. Both of those guys have extended themselves to whether it's try to help me out with figuring out how to ski better, work on the ski, look at some videos, give me some feedback. Just take their time, or just sit down and talk shop, talk theory.
Right.
I've really cherished some of those times with both of them, and just landing on the pro tour as kind of a fresh face and being amidst all of these what to me were icons. They were a couple of guys right off the bat who were very just kind and approachable, and I feel like they made a point to be that way. I feel like they kind of also share like a vision of strengthening the sport and being connected to that mission allowed them to kind of see, okay, here's a young guy that is kind of wide-eyed, like let's take him under the wing a little bit rather than just like bat him down or ignore. And so I would say that's very formative, like in those earlier, more insecure days, to help me feel like I had some sense of belonging. Those were guys I felt like I could go up and have a beer with.
Yeah.
I'd say along like Trent was like that, and Parsons and Terry Winter, some guys who were early on really big deals in my mind, but were just very like kind and approachable.
On the human level, you connected with them.
Right, and so I'll always be really thankful for that, and I always enjoy the chance now these days to get an opportunity to ski with them or travel or any of that. So yeah, those would be as far as names that people will recognize around. And I mentioned Chet earlier. Like at a time there, like I would have said that he was my guru. Like I had not really had a real ski coach before him, and so he was trying to open my eyes and peel back the layers of just like get out there and just try your hardest. I mean, that's great. Like sometimes I have some kids that are skiing with me and I'm the coach and I can give them a ton of technical stuff, but I want to just be like, come on, give me some more intensity, please. Where's your volume knob? Can I turn you up to the max and just see what happens? For me, it was always the opposite. Like I was volume turned to the max the whole time, halfway out of control. Always like trying to get Chet be trying to rein me in, be like, okay, I see that you just want to grab the handle and try to rip the rope off of the pylon.
Because you have some experience with that.
What's that? Well, yeah, right. I see you want to break the handle. That's cute, but that's going to have limitations. Like, let's get back to the chalkboard here and come up with a new plan. So, he definitely gave me some critical guidance. And the way that Chet is, I would say also, he stoked that belief. He poured a little bit of kerosene on the fire inside of me that said, you have potential with this. Like if you apply yourself, you've never had like the opportunities maybe some other skiers have had. You can climb the ladder and get better. And he was encouraging. He kind of, poured some fuel in that fire and said, hey, you can do this.
And a moment when you needed it probably because you knew the scores weren't there, the living situation was approximate, someone like that in that moment, I can see how it really shaped you and kept you going,
Yeah, so I'll definitely be forever grateful to him for that side as well. But I mean, there's a long list. I feel like eventually it becomes everybody, right? Like once you're a ski coach and you're doing this all the time and you're traveling around, everybody's kind of part of your picture. Like I've carried that feeling. It could be a student. Yeah. I mean, I tried to also learn from coaching my students. I try to learn in a business sense, like coming down here, I see Travis, he's got a really great thing going here with his ski school and the way he runs it, and also the way he's a family man and balances his life between, spending time with his wife and his daughters, and with showing up here ready to work and be successful and have fun and ski and do that balance. I'm thankful to have a couple of mentors out there. Like at Trent Finlayson, I was just texting with him last week. He just had a new baby. He still got his coaching going on. He's still skiing actively. Like I love seeing those role models out ahead a little bit that show me the way of balancing. Hey, you can be a family man and take care of your top priorities like family, but still make some ski time for yourself and still have your leg in this sport and be pursuing that passion, and
Yeah.
that is possible,
Yeah.
and to do all those things. So that for me maybe the next chapter of life. So I'm slowly looking ahead and taking notes,
Yeah, no, yeah, you struck me as someone that takes notes, you know.
mental notes at least.
Yeah, yeah. So what is, with that in mind, what is this 2020 looking like for you? What are your objectives?
Okay. And in part of that, I should also mention, of course, as far as skiers that have influenced me, my wife, Amelia, the, I wouldn't have, she's been my driver, like basically exclusively for the last 4 years. And my one ski partner.
Yeah.
And like all through the summer at home. So I don't know what would be going on if she didn't decide that she loves water skiing and we want to ski together and decide that she's going to take seriously like learning how to drive the boat to the best levels possible, because as
Yeah.
you know, whoever's at the wheel on the other end when you're trying your best passes, like it's so critical.
Super critical.
And for practice to have something consistent all the time, she's put that on herself to be the best training partner possible, and she is. It's been so much fun to do together, to see her like improve.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, she's
So,
been improving a ton.
oh yeah, even as I'm kind of like trying to work through plateau stages and get little micro gains. She's
She's
been
gaining.
adding almost a pass a summer.
Yeah.
Last year she ran 28 off in a tournament for the first time. Did it numerous times. In the California Pro-Am and the amateurs part even. So that was a really cool highlight. She set the Virginia State record for women's 2
Ooh,
last
okay.
year. Yeah, I think 3 at 32 off, or maybe two or three. And then one time at the very end of the year, in a Yeah Buddy Cup with Bob Marley, she ran 32 off for the first and only time. That was her top goal for the season, to run in practice,
Right.
32 off. And so she got that. So being having a ski partner who's always kind of on the up and like improving has been very inspiring. Like it's a constant reminder, like, okay, like progress is possible. Like I'm
Right.
seeing somebody apply new information and new feelings and get a result from it. And so that has just made the pursuit of skiing fun for us to have together.
Yeah.
And
Which is important, very important.
oh, if you're not having fun in practice, you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, those two things are linked, but the fun has to lead. Like if you're taking it so seriously that the fun has dissolved, then you might as well accept that you're going to stay where you are or backslide a little bit. You got to find a way to keep it exciting, keep it fresh and fun. So I'm really excited about coming into a new season, 2020, with her, and we've gained a lot of momentum at ski school. This last year was a banner year for us, like new people showing up, deciding to become regulars, wanting to get involved in the community further than even just coming to ski school, wanting to start to go to tournaments or clinics or stuff like that. So I feel like we're going to have a busy year in our hands. So my top priority, I've been thinking about this a little bit, is to try to cover all of my bases, like keep up my own training, because I do have more ambition. I do feel like I have more fuel in the tank and potential that I want to achieve, while also entering a new phase with ski school at home. We are expanding. I'm going to be hiring on some more help, and so kind of having some more people around to manage, which will, and then allowing some more people to come through the door and ski. So, and then also some building, allowing more people to come and stay. So there's an overall growth process, which in time, I hope that I can take a more managerial role with and set more boundaries on my own time, so that if we do have a family growing, I can pull away, I can set aside dedicated time to be just with family or do something different. But getting all the groundwork laid, I think will happen this summer. So on the ski school side, it will be very busy. And Amelia's working a full-time career, so I want to also be supportive that she helps out, not just with us skiing together, but all other kinds of things related to ski school. It's become a family business because she has really put energy into it as well. But I want to support her and make sure that she doesn't get too run down,
Of course.
in doing that. And I want to be able to do these things well so that I have positive experience when I go out and ski and practice, and I have hopefully some positive experiences when I go to events and I'm trying to hit, my best result at that tournament. I don't like last year. If you had asked me that question right here, I would say I'm going to win Worlds. I was set on that, and my whole approach from this time forward with fitness and mental stuff, I was preparing for that moment. It didn't go that way, but it was a big goal. It was that I was really putting that in front of myself. I don't have like a this year it has to be. I have to win San Gervasio Pro-Am. Look, I'm keenly aware. Like I want to win a pro event. Like that's a goal.
Yeah.
That I have not done. That I think would be one of those memories that we could file away and always cherish. And I something in me believes that it's possible, naive or not. Like I think that is something that is possible. And
you got close a few times.
Been knocked on the door and stood on the front porch a couple of times. But the biggest thing to me this year is I want to go about all of these different things that I know are going to keep me occupied and put large demands on my time and energy. I want to do each one of them well, and I don't want to allow myself to get to this operating state of being very overwhelmed and half neurotic. I feel like I have reached that state, in past years, just with trying to prioritize too many things. Obviously ski school is kind of where I make money, and I want people to have a great experience, so they want to keep coming back and tell other people, yes, I had a really good experience when I went there. I want to keep that bar set very high, but I don't want that to take away then from like my pursuit of skiing, which has been a lot to juggle. I know that you are probably very familiar with that as well.
Very.
But I'm hoping, one, just to keep my sanity as a fundamental thing, so that I am having regular, meaningful time with my wife and just enjoying my favorite month of the year, which is summer, enjoying my practice of skiing, enjoying the people that come to ski school because I'm sharing with them something that I have a passion for, skiing and coaching. I do have a passion for those things. When I feel like I get spread too thin, I become anxious, and there's a diminished reward for any one of those things, and I feel like they all start competing for attention from each other, or competing for priority. So I want to make it through 2020, kind of shoring up my own boundaries, realizing when something is starting to be too much, maybe taking a step back sometimes when I have to, like if I have to not book so many people into ski school at a particular time, or say I'm going to take these bookings, but I'm going to hand them over to an assistant, coach and driver, and that I know the people they contacted, and their expectation was that I would be there with them the whole time, but it's really not reasonable. Like I cannot commit that time for whatever reason, or with my own skiing, like if it's my time to ski, I want to feel ready. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to get lost in like oh my gosh, this tournament's coming up in 2 weeks, I have to XYZ. Like so far I haven't found that winning recipe, like the formula for showing up and doing the very best. So I think a lot of that is because I'm placing too much importance, too much pressure, too much emphasis on what it means to me. I think overall, actually, the passion that I've had for a lifetime has put that top of the podium on such a high pedestal that I've kept it out of reach from myself in a way, because it's such a big deal. Like in my mind, it's the thing. Like it's such a big deal, and instead of like as I've reached for it, I think I've just pushed it away.
Yeah.
And so it still would mean a whole lot to me, but I'm going to try to reel in my own imagination a little bit and maybe let that pedestal fall to just a place where it is,
Right.
where it actually is, and
Something
not,
that is hard but is within reach, and yeah.
and just if it's to happen this year, it's to happen. If it's not to happen this year, I'm still going to try my hardest, and I'm still going to have a lot of meaningful experiences off the water with people who are now, over some years now, true friends.
Yeah.
Like you are someone that way. Like if I come to San Gervasio and I get very last place, I'll still be happy that we got to hang out. Maybe we'll go have a coffee and
Right.
we'll, look at Lake Iseo and say, well, maybe next year,
Right. Exactly.
whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm in a more comfortable place now, with feeling like I do have a core unit of friends in skiing that makes these trips meaningful no matter what happens. And so Amelia and I are planning to come to your event in July, and then there's a new event popping up in Greece.
In Kayafas, yeah.
Yeah, we've never been there. Greece sounds lovely. Sounds
Yep.
like a great thing to do. So we're gonna try to stretch. We're gonna stretch out a week. Try to do those two events. Depending on how things are going, I have not made up my mind. Probably it'll have to be just that, and I'll have to get back to ski school. If I'm having some help with staff and they're doing a killer job, then maybe I can stretch it out one more week and stay for the Andy Mapple Pro-Am in London. I know Amelia will have to get back to work, but if also I may have to get back and get to ski school, or just
Right.
depending, you never know how you're skiing, like could be everything's going great and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be crazy not to stick around
Right,
and
right.
try this tournament because I have momentum, it feels good. Or you could be like, what is going on right now? Like, I think I need to go home and
Regroup a little bit.
switch my ski binding, fin setup, everything, and I'll see everybody in a month or so.
Right, right. Yeah,
So-
you never know.
But overall, I'm trying to approach the season with like less pressure that it has to be one particular thing.
Okay.
Like last year, I was certain World Championship. It's a World's year. I'm going to peak there, but even on either side of that, I'm going to have some major moments. Oh, there's one highlight reel. Herb's Cup last year. I won Herb's Cup. That was
Oh, there you go.
a big one. That's such a special event. Talk about great people around all the time. I mean, that's one you're going to have fun at, even if you ski your very worst.
Right.
But it makes it that much better to ski some of your best and have other people ski well and come out on the top of a competition. And it was extra special because I got to hang with Eddie Roberts a little bit that night after the event around the bonfire. And we kind of knew, I mean, he'd been in a long battle with cancer and he had been fighting a really good fight. But I kind of knew at the time, like, I may never see Eddie again. And I didn't know him for really a long time. I know he's been around for a really long time and been a major innovator in our sport. But in a very short time, he's one of those people that makes you feel like you've known him for a long time, instantly comfortable, just has a lot of love and joy and passion to share. And so to kind of get to stand there with him with the cup and the two of us holding it together, that felt really special. Like he always made me somehow feel special in the short time we knew each other, and to kind of be like, hey, thank you for making these the best skis that I've ever been on. Like we're like, this is a team thing.
Right.
That was super cool. So that's always
What a moment, man.
A good moment. Yeah.
What a moment.
That's a memory. Yeah. And Amelia was there, so we got to celebrate. It was, yeah.
That's awesome.
Now like all these things are kind of flooding into me. Influential people in my water ski
Bring them
career
on.
life. Yep. Not to mention Brooks Wilson would be totally wrong. I feel like he's just been doing a superb job as Radar brand manager, and it's been just fantastic to have we started out having a bit of a friendship, and then through Radar we've gotten to know each other better, which has certainly deepened that friendship, but then it's also been just a great working relationship where it's kind of added a whole side arm to my business where we're selling products, and that's helped more people get stoked. They're able to get a new ski that's more suited to their needs. Then they want to show up more because they feel better when they go out on the water. So I just feel like he's doing a lot of great things. He's been super good to me in all kinds of ways in terms of support, whether it's trying to get me on the best ski that I can be on, or maybe make the difference of getting to this event versus not getting there. And then also just he's somebody that's also so passionately committed to growing the sport.
Absolutely.
And bringing it to its potential of what the sport can be. You know, he knows that I'm into that mission, and the ski school is a big part of that. So, you know, trying to do events like the Radar Nation Day type thing, and keep me in a position where I can be using Radar's platform or whatever to build stoke around ski school.
Yeah.
You know, that's been very impactful, and it's been kind of part of this newer leg of probably what the next 10 years will be about. So I don't know. There's tons more people. Shoot, I mean, how can I?
No, I know it's always a tough question, right? But I think it always goes to show, and I hope especially to the younger skiers listening to this, that they might be getting into that like one lane track. I need to run this. That it's not a soul journey. And you're actually, well, if you want to see it from a performance perspective, you're putting yourself in a bad place.
Yep.
If you are trying to make it a soul journey. But on top of that, it's just gonna be like burnout it's gonna be more likely to happen.
Yep.
You're going to start to lose the idea of like why you're doing this. And I don't have to tell you how many skiers, like you've been around for a while too, how many skiers we've seen so talented, great skiers, great competitors, then eventually for one reason or another, a lot of times being burnout. Yep. Or, you know, you just don't see them anymore.
No.
And I think that once you realize the key importance that people in your journey have,
yep,
that's when you're more likely to continue skiing, to say talk about skiing, to get people into skiing, you know, to do what you have been doing so well and gracefully.
Right. Yeah, I think that like determination and dedication, they can feel like different things at different times, you know, like
yep.
I can get really determined where I want to crush it in the gym and get in great shape and ski hard and all of those things, you know, spend some time visualizing whatever it is that's going to help my pursuit. But you can only gain so much from those solo like practices.
Right.
It's not just that more is better all the time, and the more determined that you are, and the more you have a clean diet and do this, that, or the other thing, automatically the more that will transfer over. You can't be pedal to the metal all of the time, and if you try to, yeah, you're going to just run into the rocks somewhere. And it's those other people that, you know, somebody else might be kind of riding a little bit more of a high right now, and maybe as a coach or a ski partner or just a friend, you're not taking their energy, but they're reminding you of what it's like to feel that way. And you know from having been around the wheel a couple of times, like, okay, that awaits you if you stick it out, reinvent what's going on, allow it to come full circle, and get back to that. And then, you know, simultaneously at that point in time, then you are that for somebody else. And I feel like once everyone kind of notices that's what the community is about, like we're all kind of sending that around, and not everyone can have it all at once, but that we can understand each other. Back to what we said in part one. You have that bond, and that's like a lifetime thing.
It really is.
Yep.
It really is. Look, I don't know. Anything that we didn't say? Something you wanted to touch on?
Well, we never looped back to the philosophy part, but if we start there, then we're going to have part 3 and 4 and 5, because...
listen, man, when you're coming to San Gervasio, we'll carve some time to just talk about philosophy. I don't know how it relates to skiing. Maybe we can put some connections there, but,
yeah,
you know.
For sure. No, I think we covered a lot. You know, there's nothing that stands out that was really missing, and if we do it again sometime, I'm sure we'll cover it if it was. There's always 10 things to talk about, like more things to talk about with skiing. But I have noticed my buzzer in my pocket going off like the last 10 minutes or so. So we still have skiers on the dock. I'm kind of wondering if we're being demanded to go and
we might
pull
have
some more rides.
Yeah, we might have. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure to talk to you and to see you and get to spend some time with you. I'm very happy we got to do it in front of a couple of microphones. We had a couple of issues like mounting, but I guess, you know, like we figured it out. Thanks again. Best of wishes for this season, both in terms of ski school and in terms of your own skiing. Where can people find you? Like if they want to come and ski with you, like how would that work out?
Yeah, I think probably the best starting point is website peaceloveandwaterskiing.com, just all spelled out, peaceloveandwaterskiing.com. And my contact info is all there. My email is on there, and phone number, Google Map directions. Sometimes the little web forum box does not forward things to my email address, so the safer bet is just see my contact information on there and just email me directly.
And then I'll put them in the show notes so that people through this episode can get to,
Great. And it's Peace, Love, and Water Skiing on Instagram, and it's Corey Vaughn on Facebook. Last year, I did like no social media. It's almost like a New Year's resolution that I really should try to use that. I'd like to use that platform more. It would be good for my business. I just lost total interest like in social media the last year.
I feel you.
I haven't been able to hardly bring myself to do it, but I'm gonna get back there.
And then share this episode there, so might motivate you even more to get back into that stream, because I agree, sometimes it's superfluous, it's superficial, but at the end of the day, it's good for business.
Well, and it's good when you do make those real connections, somebody you haven't talked to in a while, or just kind of little connections with people that you only connect with in that way. I don't want to let that go entirely. I guess I've just been craving the very real here and now things too much, and I haven't been willing to sacrifice putting my phone between me and those things frequently enough to keep an active social media game. But it is kind of like a resolution. I want to actually fire up that Instagram a bit more and be there. But just wanted to return what you said. Really appreciate the opportunity to sit down together and have a conversation, and thank you for your many efforts in the sport, from podcasting to event hosting to coaching. I'm really excited to see you come out of the doctoral program.
Thank you. We're close.
I know. It's been a journey.
It has been.
And kind of see you land from there, and very excited to hang out in Italy with you this summer. Thanks for being one of those lifetime friends that have come out of this crazy journey.
Dude, my pleasure. Thanks again for sitting in front of the mic, and who knows, maybe we'll do it again this summer.
Sounds great, man.
Boom.
See ya. Thank you.